trunk still fit like a dream.
Dad, the shower's gone cold again.
There goes the boiler and the seaside brake. Relax. If your boiler's on its last legs, get a new one from British Gas and spread the cost over 3 years, interest-free. Plus, our home care customers get £200 off. So those legs could see some sun after all. Hurry, offer ends 31st of May. Search British Gas new boiler. Conditions apply. British Gas New Heating Limited is a credit broker and uses a panel of lenders.
This is LBC. Have you got big decorating or DIY?
assessed, and after the thoughts of the head of the Met, Cressida today about this, the way in which this vigil was policed, that maybe it's the police that have been treated unfairly in the anger after that. 03456060973, text on 84850. Tom, my partner, is a Met police officer and she policed the Sarah Everard event. If you ask her which event she'd rather police, a high-pressure football event, an EDL rally, the Eco Warriors, or a group of feminists, the one she least looks forward to is the feminists. With all the others, you can find somewhere a way to converse with them. At feminist events, she is abused even more because she is female and a police officer and dreads the way she will be treated. Michaela says, Tom, some of the officers were spat at, they were hit with debris, and they were shouted at. They showed great restraint. This was an organised event against police officers. 0345 6060 973. Rebecca's in Bath to kick us off. Rebecca.
Hi. Originally, I was a little bit disappointed in the police response, but then, and I wasn't at the event, so all I've got to go on, like most people, is the YouTube videos and whatever else. And then you saw that the vigil was respectful, it was calm, and then it became a protest. And I saw those videos of a police officer talking to one of the women who was on the bandstand, sort of talking to the crowd. And they went on and on talking to them and on talking to them. But we're now having a discussion about those people who are protesting and the police. And I'm really sort of worried that we're missing the point that the discussion has to be about how men treat women. But it's distracting, and it's like almost we're missing the point. And there's lots of people very passionate about how the police acted. I now think that, given the circumstances and how it had gone through the day and then ended up, was probably not over the top. And women just saying, we're women, we were beautiful. I heard somebody earlier on LBC saying that I was amongst beautiful women who, it doesn't matter if they're beautiful or not, and it doesn't matter if they're women, did something wrong, was something wrong done.
Does it matter, Rebecca, if the arresting officer is a man and is acting in a way that, with your knee to your back and leaning on your stuff?
If they were acting unfairly, because they were treating a woman differently than they were treating a man, yes, that's wrong. If they were treating somebody because they were potentially breaking the law, because they were not responding to the police request, then you could question it. But this whole argument that's grown up over that, I think is losing the point. We had a moment some weeks ago to really discuss how men treat women.
Well, you heard it from one of the organisers of the event that was cancelled, but then the vigil was on anyway, saying that in her view there is systemic sexism within the police, and Dame Cressida Dick herself talking about a decision 24 hours beforehand to look at whether deploying an all-female force to police that event would have been the right one. Do you think it would have been?
Is it systemic sexism in the police or within our country? That's my question. So it would have been, I'm glad that she even considered that, because I think that was a wise choice.
You think?
A wise thought. But then it's also this idea of, I'm a woman, I want to be an equal. I don't want to be treated with kid gloves. I want to be treated equally. So ultimately, so I'm glad she considered it. But I think it's right that there was a mixed gender police force. The fact that some of those men may have treated women differently, or did they do?
Well, that's it. Can I just read you this tweet from Simon? Surely male police officers holding female protesters down and kneeling on them is not sexist and not treating them like anyone and treating them like anyone else.
Yeah, and that is to an extent true. However, you also have to think about body size and have
Yes, you don't
trained character.
You've got to do it proportionally, and you've got to be. There's also rightly there are all sorts of rules about the force the police used to arrest me. But you're, Rebecca, as someone that was clearly moved by the original reasons to have the vigil in the first place and the conversations that were sparked as a result, your view some months on of how it was policed seems to be, well, actually maybe it was fair and
It was fair and appropriate when it came to later in the evening because it had changed. And, earlier in the day, all I have heard is that earlier in the day it was calm, it was peaceful, people were paying their respects, which was what it was there for. Then people came to protest. And then that's when things kicked off. And that's, ultimately to me, that's the thing that's most disappointing, is that it's all become about that. It's not become about what it should be about, which is how do men treat women and ensure that they are safe.
That is absolutely right. I wonder actually if the images from that event of male police officers arresting women in the way go exactly to that question. And one of the things that the Met had to display and the police had to show was that they weren't acting in a way that was in accordance with what must be a lot of women's views, that they live in a very scary and male-dominated society where they're going to be literally manhandled by the police in a way that is sexist or inappropriate.
It is, it comes back to that, doesn't it? Is it manhandled or is it being handled? Would a man be handled in the same way? And yes, you would go female size and strength and whatever else. You don't need to use so much force. And they were certainly, but ultimately, these were women, some of the women, it seemed, who were shouting an awful lot of abuse and threats at the police. Yeah, maybe, hindsight, the police should have been a little bit more, it probably would have paid for them to step back. But it's a very difficult situation where, because you don't know how it's going to kick off.
Right.
And I've changed. I'm having slightly less sympathy for those protesters because this was a vigil for a very, it was an important one, that they have now drawn the attention away from the vigil and put it on something completely different. And it was how police behave. Yes, certainly, but I'm going to guess there's a video out there that shows a female police officer manhandling women in the same way.
Well, listen, Rebecca, I have to say I largely agree with you. I think that it is a shame that events happened as they did, and I do think this goes to another point that is lost sometimes in the anger and cacophony of noise that follows policing and policing tactics and the display of policing tactics, which is, my God, is it tough being a police officer. It is so hard to see a snapshot of a judgment made by a police officer borne out on a video on social media and understand the full context behind it. It's incredibly difficult to be a police officer, particularly during COVID times. Do they always get it right? No, they absolutely do not always get it right, but I think most people's trust is in policemen and women to do a fair and appropriate and right job 99% of the time. Where it goes wrong, they absolutely need to have a ton of bricks and they need to have the book thrown at them and it needs to be made an example of. But this is an example where I think, all those headlines afterwards about, the Met shames Britain and these police officers have acted in exactly the way in which those that were there to pay their respects thought of much of society, that a male-dominated, male-oppressive society was showing itself through these very images and the policing of that event. On reflection, I don't think that's true, is it? Rebecca, thank you for your call. 03456060973. More calls to come. Tom Swarbrick on LBC 631. News headlines now. Tom Swarbrick.
The families of 10 people shot dead in West Belfast nearly 50 years ago have welcomed a ruling exonerating their relatives. A coroner found the use of force by British troops in Ballymurphy was disproportionate and those killed were entirely innocent. MPs have been debating the government's legislative programme for the coming year, as set out in the Queen's speech. Priorities include the recovery from the pandemic, but the government's been criticised for a lack of detail on social care reforms. Detectives are searching a cafe in Gloucester for the body of a suspected victim of Fred West. Mary Bastholm's disappearance in 1968 was at a time when the serial killer was abducting teenage girls in the city. Rain moving northwards into Scotland, becoming heavy in places, turning dry in the south later, a low of 3 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, LBC.
Labour MP and Shadow Forest Secretary Lisa Nandy, how long has Sir Keir got as leader of the Labour Party in your view?
He's got until the election when he will hopefully become the Prime Minister.
If Hadley and Spen were to go against him, which of course might be as soon as July, questions about his leadership would be open then, wouldn't they?
Being the leader of the opposition is the hardest job in politics. We know that we could deliver real change and we could start to really level up places across this country.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, weekday mornings from 7. Listen live on Global Player, LBC.
You can always trust a bit of stargazing to put a twinkle in your eye. So if you're on the lookout for someone to do that building renovation, complete with stargazing skylight, simply visit trustatrader.com. There you'll find plenty of vetted, reviewed, reliable professionals in an abundance of trades. Like a builder who'll provide the star treatment. For trusted tradespeople, let the superstars align.
In a world that's full of uncertainty, there's one thing you can always rely on. If your Mini needs a helping hand to get back to its best, your local Mini Centre is here to help. Now with 20% off selected services when you book online. Ensure any repairs are carried out using genuine Mini parts that come with a 2-year warranty. And rest assured we follow the latest government guidelines on sanitisation. You can be certain that your Mini is ready for the road ahead. Search Mini Service to book at your local Mini Centre today. T's and C's apply. Participating retailers only. Offer for online pre-booked and listed services completed before 18th of June. Not applicable for bookings made by mobile app. Offer may be withdrawn at any time.
Yesterday, you weren't thinking about starting a business. You were thinking, I can't be the only person who makes birthday gifts for their dog. So today, you are thinking about starting a business, and you joined NatWest's free online business builder course to help you work out your target market and how to reach them. Then tomorrow, super excited, you get the name at Happy Birth Dog on Insta and start planning how to take your pooch-friendly prezzies global. Search NatWest Business Builder to sign up. NatWest. Tomorrow begins today.
Do your teeth stop you from smiling and eating? Do you hate the thought of false teeth? Talk to TDC about Smile in a Day dental implants. TDC Smile in a Day dental implants look and work just like real teeth, so you can eat what you want and smile when you want.
I just wish I'd gone to TDC years ago.
Let TDC restore your teeth and your smile. Book your consultation today. Visit smileinaday.co.uk.
It's time to get your business back on track. At Total Jobs, we've been helping our customers hire the people they need for over 20 years. That's why they rate us excellent on Trustpilot. So if you're looking to grow your team, do it with a team you can trust. Total Jobs. Advertise today at totaljobs.com/hire. Finding myself cycling a bit more at the minute. For those little, I need to buy an extra lemon and who's used up all the dishwasher tablets type trips. It's not just sneaking in a bit of exercise. It's taking in more of your local area. You know, the sounds. Oh, not him. Wherever you're going, there's good in every journey when you bike it or walk it. Download the TfL Go app to find walking and cycling routes. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Texting on 84850. Tom, my takeaway image from the BLM protests during lockdown 1 were that officers were taking the knee. My takeaway image from the Clapham Common vigil is 2 male police officers kneeling on a woman. That's just a fact. I think that the women were there to cause trouble, but that's what police officers have to deal with. If the police weren't on the bandstand, I doubt the mourners would have gone after them, says this texter. Do you think that that people are too quick to criticise the tactics of police? You look at the protests in Bristol that there were to the bill that is now been announced in the Queen's speech about the police courts and sentencing bill that has angered a lot of people, not least because it puts in their provisions to find ways to stop protests or halt protests based on noise or inconvenience. We saw lots of people out on the streets in Bristol protesting that one. The police, again, were criticised for the manner in which they handled that particular protest, and it may well be absolutely spot on. They may well have been far too aggressive. The thumping of a journalist in the face was, of course, completely unnecessary and shouldn't have happened. But I wonder to what extent you think that we are a bit too quick to jump to criticise the police in a very, very difficult environment, doing a very, very tough job made more difficult by coronavirus. If you are a police officer, do you feel that people's trust in you doing your job to the standard that you do it, but to the standard to which people expect you to do it, has dropped? If so, why? 0345 6060 973 comes your calls in just a few moments. Now, if you just got in the car, a long day at work, or you've just picked up the kids from the club, I don't know, after school, it's too late to pick up from school, isn't it? Should have had tea by now. If you haven't caught up with everything COVID related, whether it's the restrictions that are coming on or off, how many people you can have round for a barbecue, who it is you can see tomorrow, we'll bring you our COVID report every day at this time with LBC's Lindsay Alder.
Hugs are being allowed in Scotland as well as England from next week. The First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has confirmed that from Monday, people in the country won't have to social distance when meeting friends and family inside a private home or garden.
I know how much everyone has been looking forward to being able to do this again. It is one of the simple pleasures of life that I suspect, and I hope actually, that none of us will ever take quite so much for granted again.
Most parts of Scotland will be dropping down to level 2 of COVID restrictions, which also means pubs and restaurants can serve alcohol indoors and cinemas can reopen. The rules are slightly different from England though, as it's 6 people from 3 households indoors and 8 people from 8 households outside. These people in Glasgow told us they're excited.
Don't like drinking outside, it's too cold. Sometimes you've got the canopies, but I'd still rather be inside, to be honest.
Over a year ago, so that's my mum and dad have never been able to come over, so they're living around when they got kids, I've been missing them. Only phone calls and stuff like that they can do. Can't wait.
But not all of Scotland will have the same rules. The island communities of Orkney, Shetland and Western Isles will move to level 1 on the same day, so more freedoms there. Meanwhile, it's looking like the Murray area will stay locked down after a surge in COVID cases. Alison Hunter runs a pub in Aberlour.
It's awful at the moment. But I think it just makes people more aware, doesn't it? And they'll do everything they can to make sure that it's dealt with quickly.
The final decision on what's happening in Murray will be made later in the week. On to Wales now, and whilst COVID rule changes for Monday won't be announced till Friday, we have been told 9 pilot events will take place over the next month. Starting with Eid this week, up to 500 people will be allowed to gather. Wales' Euro 2020 warm-up game against Albania on the 5th of June will see 4,000 spectators allowed in the stadium. In England, the Health Secretary's confirmed people travelling abroad will be able to use the NHS app to show they've had both doses of a COVID vaccine. Travel abroad on holiday will be allowed from Monday, but only green list destinations will require no isolation period back home. Well, speaking of the vaccine, protests have taken place outside AstraZeneca's sites in Oxford, Cambridge and Cheshire today, with demonstrators demanding the pharmaceutical company freely shares its technology. Activists say the step is needed to speed up the vaccination programmes of developing countries to save lives. Nick Dearden is part of the demonstration outside the AstraZeneca site in Macclesfield.
Part of the world, the very rich part of the world, is well on its way to getting immunised against coronavirus, whereas many countries haven't even received a single shot. And you can see the results of that in the horrific scenes now from India. We absolutely have to ramp up production of these vaccines as fast as possible. And one of the ways we can do that is to stop allowing big multinational corporations like AstraZeneca to monopolise the know-how behind these vaccines.
Meanwhile, the re-elected mayor of Greater Manchester says the UK's vaccine committee is considering a proposal to give COVID jabs to all over 16s in the area. Andy Burnham's asked for the move after a rise in cases around Bolton linked to the variant first found in India. More than 67% of UK adults have now had 1 dose of the jab, with more than 18 million having both. A further 20 people have died in the UK within 28 days of testing positive for COVID-19, taking the total to 127,629. Boris Johnson says a public inquiry inquiry into the government's handling of the pandemic could be launched within a year.
LBC's Lindsay Alder reporting. That point about a pandemic inquiry being launched by Boris Johnson by the end of the year came in the Queen's speech that he responded to earlier this afternoon. Speaking to MPs on their first day of this Parliament, the Prime Minister said that an inquiry was essential. Lobby Akinola is a member of the COVID-bereaved Families for Justice. His father died aged 60 from coronavirus with no underlying issues. I'm very sorry for your loss, Lobby. Thank you for coming on the programme. I wonder what you made of what the Prime Minister committed to, setting up an inquiry this year.
Thank you for having me. I think it's a small step in the right direction. We've all known that an inquiry is definitely necessary following such tragedy on such a large scale, but there's still questions that remain about that.